The white walls of the medical center felt cold against Krikstal's blue-scaled skin. He sat across from the human woman, his 6 fingers tapping nervously on the metal table between them. The human called herself Lisa Stone. She was a journalist, she had said. She wanted to hear his story. Krikstal had refused to speak for 15 years. The memories were too painful, too strange. But now, sitting in this quiet room, he felt ready to tell someone what really happened during the war. "You want to know about fighting humans?" Krikstal said, his voice making clicking sounds that the translator turned into human words. "Everyone thinks they know. They think humans won because they were lucky. They are wrong." Lisa Stone held a small recording device. Her brown eyes looked patient but curious. "Tell me what really happened out there." Krikstal's large black eyes stared at the ceiling. "Before the war, we thought humans were simple, weak. Our scouts watched your planet for many cycles. You still used bullets instead of energy weapons. Your ships were slow. Your cities looked easy to destroy." He paused, remembering the confidence his people had felt. "Supreme Commander Vexhar told us it would take 3 cycles to conquer Earth, maybe less. We had conquered 47 worlds before yours. Some fought back. All of them fell. The alien veterans' breathing became heavier. We made our first attack on Kepler 442b, a human colony world, small, maybe 50,000 humans living there. We sent 2 battle groups. That should have been enough to destroy 100 colonies." Lisa leaned forward slightly. "What went wrong?" "Nothing went wrong at first," Krikstal said. "Our ships arrived. We sent the surrender message like always. The humans ignored it, so we began the attack." He remembered the first orbital bombardment, the bright flashes as their weapons hit the colony's main buildings, the satisfaction of watching the power grid fail. Everything seemed normal. We landed our soldiers 12 hours later. Battle leader Kextal commanded 800 of our best troops. They had fought on 12 worlds. They knew how to win quick and clean. Krikstal's claws scraped against the table. The humans were supposed to run or hide. Most species do this when their cities burn. But humans did something else. The alien's voice became quieter. The colony leader was named Jake Martinez, former soldier from your world's military. Our intelligence said he grew food and taught children. He seemed harmless. Lisa waited for him to continue. Martinez had prepared for us. Somehow he knew we were coming. When our soldiers landed, the humans were not hiding in buildings. They were hiding in the ground, in caves, in places that should not exist. Krikstal closed his eyes. The first squad that died, they were checking an empty farm. 10 soldiers, all experienced fighters. They found nothing but crops and animal pens. Then the ground exploded. The memory was still sharp after all these years. The humans had dug tunnels under everything. They had planted bombs made from farming chemicals. When our soldiers walked over them, Martinez triggered the explosives. He opened his eyes again. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" The surviving soldiers called for help. While they waited, they heard sounds. Human voices. But not screaming or crying like most species do when they are losing. The humans were laughing. Krikstal's translator struggled with the emotion in his voice. They were enjoying themselves. These primitive farmers were having fun fighting soldiers who had conquered worlds. The alien described how the rescue teams found booby traps everywhere. Simple devices made from common tools, but placed with perfect knowledge of how Zephyrian soldiers moved and thought. Martinez knew exactly how we would respond to each attack. When we sent scouts, humans would appear from nowhere, kill them, and disappear. When we sent large groups, they would attack with weapons that should not have worked. Lisa asked, "What kind of weapons?" "Animals," Krikstal said, his voice flat with disbelief. They turned their farm animals into weapons. Creatures called cows with explosives attached to them. Birds that carried acid bombs. Martinez even trained some animals called pigs to trigger traps when our soldiers came near. The alien veteran rubbed his forehead. Our soldiers began to panic. These were warriors who had fought star pirates and energy beasts, but they could not understand an enemy that used livestock as artillery. He continued with the story of how human colonists kept appearing in impossible places. They would attack from underground, from treetops, from inside buildings that looked empty. The humans never fought fair battles. They never stood in lines like proper soldiers. They would hit us and run away, then hit us again from a different direction. Always laughing, always making jokes on our communication channels. Krixtal explained how Martinez and his people seemed to know everything about Zephyrian equipment and tactics. Even though first contact had happened only days before, Martinez started calling our soldiers by name, personal names from their service records, information he should not have had. He would announce exactly how he planned to kill each one. Then he would do it. The alien's hands shook slightly. After 6 days, Battle Leader Kextal requested permission to use planet-killer weapons. He said the humans were not acting like any species he had ever fought. He said they were acting like the planet was trying to kill us. Lisa looked confused. The planet? Yes, Krixtal nodded. The humans did not fight like people defending a home. They fought like they were part of the world itself. Like the rocks and trees and water were helping them. He described the final battle on Kepler 442b. How Martinez had somehow convinced the other human colonies to send help. How transport ships full of farmers and teachers and children arrived and immediately joined the fighting. Children, Krixtal whispered. Human children were making bombs and setting traps. They were 12 years old and planning military operations. The alien veteran looked directly at Lisa. We had fought species that were stronger than us, faster than us, had better technology than us, but we had never fought a species that adapted while we were fighting them. He leaned back in his chair. After 9 days, Battle Leader Kextal ordered a retreat. 800 soldiers had become less than 200. The humans had lost maybe 50 people. Martinez sent us a message as we left. What did he say? Krixtal's translator made a sound like static before speaking. He said thank you for the practice. He said his people learned something new about fighting every day, and he said if we came back they would be ready with better surprises. The alien was quiet for a long moment. That was when we realized this war would not be easy. That was when we realized humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. Lisa Stone looked at her notes. But that was just one battle. Surely the Empire adapted too. Krixtal made a sound that might have been laughter. Oh, we tried to adapt. We tried very hard, but humans adapt faster than we could learn. And that was our real nightmare. Lisa Stone watched as Krixtal poured water from a pitcher with shaking hands. The alien's blue skin had grown paler during his first story. She wondered what could make a veteran warrior look so afraid just from remembering. The defeat at Kepler 442b made our leaders angry. Krixtal continued. Supreme Commander Vexhar said we had been careless. He said one small colony could not represent all humans. He decided to attack a bigger target. The alien's black eyes focused on something far away. New Montana was an agricultural world. 3 million humans lived there. Mostly farmers and ranchers. Our intelligence said they had very few soldiers. Lisa made notes as he spoke. So the Empire sent a larger force? Much larger, Krixtal nodded. 3 full battle fleets, 60,000 soldiers. War Prime Zekton commanded the attack personally. He was our greatest military leader. He had never lost a battle. The alien veteran described how confident everyone felt before the attack. This would prove that Kepler 442b had been a mistake, a lucky accident that would never happen again. We arrived at New Montana expecting to see scared farmers running away. Instead, we found that every human on the planet was waiting for us. Krixtal explained how the orbital scans showed something impossible. The humans had turned their entire world into a military base in just 2 weeks. Grain silos had become missile launchers. Barns were hiding anti-aircraft weapons. Even the farm animals were gone. The humans had moved 3 million people and all their livestock to underground shelters. But that was not the strangest part, he said. The strangest part was who was commanding the human defenses. Colonel Amy Carter was a career soldier. That made sense to us. But her second in command was a man named Pete Williams. He had never been in the military. He raised cattle before the war started. Krixtal described how this confused Zephyrian intelligence officers. Why would humans put a farmer in charge of defending a planet? We learned the answer very quickly, he said with a bitter tone. Pete Williams knew that planet better than any soldier could. He knew every hill, every river, every road, and he knew exactly how to use them against us. The alien veteran continued with the story of the landing. War Prime Zekton had decided to land forces in 12 different locations at once. This would prevent the humans from concentrating their defenses. Each landing site could handle 5,000 soldiers easily. We had done this on many worlds before. It always worked. But on New Montana, the landing sites turned into death traps. Williams had studied how we landed troops. He knew we always chose flat ground near water sources. So he prepared every flat area on the planet. Krikstal's voice became strained. The first landing site looked perfect. Open grassland next to a river. No trees or rocks for enemies to hide behind. Our ships landed and soldiers began unloading equipment. He paused to drink more water. Then the ground started moving. Lisa looked up from her notes. Moving? The humans had dug huge tunnels under the grassland. They filled them with explosives and waited. When our ships landed, Williams triggered the charges. The entire landing site collapsed into a pit 50 meters deep. But even that was not the worst part, Krikstal said. The worst part was what the humans had put in the pit. They had moved all their farm animals down there. Hundreds of cattle and horses and pigs. But they had modified them. The alien's hands trembled as he described what the rescue teams found. The animals had been fitted with weapons, simple projectile launchers attached to their backs. When our soldiers fell into the pit, the animals attacked them. He explained how the humans had somehow trained their livestock to recognize Zephyrian, armor and target specific weak points. A creature, called a bull, charged straight at our heavy weapons specialist. It had 2 rocket launchers mounted on its horns. The rockets were made from farming fertilizer, but they punched through military armor like it was paper. Lisa struggled to imagine the scene. How did they train animals to do that? We never found out, Krikstal admitted. But it worked. Every landing site had different surprises. At the second site, they had trained birds to carry acid bombs. At the third, they had modified their farming machines into mobile artillery. The alien described how War Prime Zekton tried to adapt his tactics as each landing failed, but the humans seemed to anticipate every change. Colonel Carter and Pete Williams were somehow coordinating all the defenses perfectly. They knew exactly where we would attack next and how we would do it. But the real terror began when the humans started their psychological warfare campaign. We found small recording devices hidden near our camps, human voices speaking perfect Zephyrian language. They knew our military ranks, our chain of command, even personal details about our soldiers. Krikstal explained how the recordings would play the names of specific soldiers, then describe exactly how the humans planned to kill them. A sniper named Kate Murphy made recordings for our officer corps. She would say things like, "Captain Drelkin, I am watching you through my scope right now. When you step outside your shelter tomorrow morning, I will put a bullet through your left eye." The alien's voice became barely a whisper. Then she would do exactly what she promised. He described how Kate Murphy had been an Olympic athlete before the war, a sport called biathlon that combined skiing and shooting. On New Montana, she used those skills to eliminate Zephyrian officers from distances that should have been impossible. She could hit targets from over 2 kilometers away, in wind and rain. While moving, our soldiers started refusing to leave their shelters. But Murphy was not the only human conducting psychological warfare. Engineer teams led by a man named Frank Chen had somehow learned to hack into Zephyrian communication networks. Chen was a scientist before the war. He studied spaceflight and planetary engineering. But during the battle, he became our worst nightmare. Krikstal described how Chen's team managed to infiltrate their helmet displays and communication systems. They would broadcast human entertainment programs directly into our soldiers' equipment during firefights. Lisa looked confused. Entertainment programs? Horror stories, Krikstal clarified. Fictional tales designed to frighten humans for fun, but watching them during combat made our soldiers panic. He explained how humans seemed to create these frightening stories as a form of recreation. The idea that any species would enjoy being scared was completely alien to Zephyrian thinking. Our soldiers would be advancing on a human position when suddenly their helmet displays would show images of monsters and death. Meanwhile, the humans would be laughing and making jokes on our communication channels. The alien veteran described how the combination of effective tactics and psychological warfare began breaking down Zephyrian morale completely. After 12 days of fighting, War Prime Zekton had lost 30,000 soldiers. The humans had lost maybe 300. Our most experienced warriors were asking to be transferred to fight the Krellian death cults instead. Krikstal explained that the Krellian death cults were considered the most savage enemies in the galaxy. The fact that Zephyrian soldiers preferred to fight them rather than humans showed how desperate they had become. War Prime Zekton finally ordered a retreat on day 15. As our ships prepared to leave, Pete Williams sent us a message. The alien looked directly at Lisa. He thanked us for helping his people test their new defensive strategies. He said the battle had given them many good ideas for improving their weapons and tactics. Krikstal's translator made static sounds as he continued. Then he said something that still gives me nightmares. He said humans had been wondering what would happen if they stopped being nice to their enemies. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. What did he mean by that? We did not understand at the time, Krikstal admitted. We thought they had fought as hard as they could. We thought we had seen the worst humans could do. The alien veteran was quiet for a long moment. We were very wrong about that. The battles at Kepler 442b and New Montana were just humans being playful. We had not seen them when they were serious about winning a war. The lights in the medical center flickered for a moment. Krikstal paused in his story, looking around nervously before continuing. Lisa Stone noticed how the alien's breathing had become more rapid as he talked about deeper memories. After New Montana, Supreme Commander Vexhar became desperate, Krikstal said. 2 major defeats had made him look weak in front of the Imperial Council. He needed a victory to save his career. The alien veteran explained how the Empire's leadership had begun to panic. No species had ever resisted Zephyrian expansion for more than a few weeks. The human war was entering its 2nd month with no clear end in sight. Vexhar decided that our problem was not having enough advanced technology in the fight. He ordered our research fleets to join the war effort. Lisa looked up from her notes. Research fleets? Mobile laboratories, Krikstal clarified. Ships full of our best scientists and engineers. They were supposed to study human tactics and develop counters for them. But the humans had their own scientists, he explained, and they were doing something that no Zephyrian had thought possible. The human research ship was called the Defiant Spirit. It was not a warship. Before the conflict, it had been a civilian mining vessel, but the humans had modified it during the fighting. Krikstal described how the ship's chief engineer, Maria Santos, had turned a simple mining ship into something that violated several galactic conventions on warfare. Santos had been a civilian engineer. She designed equipment for digging tunnels and processing ore. But when the war started, she began designing weapons instead. The alien's voice carried a note of reluctant admiration. In 3 weeks, she had created weapons that our engineers said were impossible to build with human technology. He explained how Santos and her team had studied, captured Zephyrian equipment and reverse-engineered it with improvements. They would capture one of our weapons, take it apart, and build a better version in days, not weeks or months like proper research takes, days. But the most disturbing part was how quickly humans learned to use unfamiliar technology. A combat medic named Alex Turner had never seen energy weapons before the war, but after examining wounded Zephyrian soldiers, he designed ammunition that could penetrate our armor by targeting weak points in our biology. Krikstal shuddered at the memory. Turner studied our body structure by looking at injuries. Then he created bullets that would cause maximum damage to our organs. He turned medical knowledge into a weapon. The alien veteran continued with the story of the first major space battle between research fleets. Our ships had better technology, heavier armor, and more powerful weapons. The battle should have been over in minutes. Instead, it lasted for 6 hours and ended with the Zephyrian fleet in retreat. The humans did not fight like any space force we had encountered. Their tactics made no sense according to proper military doctrine. He described how human ships commanded by captains like Nina Cross would deliberately crash into Zephyrian vessels instead of fighting at safe distances. Cross had been a coastal patrol officer on Earth. She was used to rescuing people from dangerous waters, but in space she used those same skills to board our ships. Krikstal explained how Cross and her teams would ram their ships into Zephyrian hulls, then fight hand-to-hand in the wreckage. Our soldiers were trained for organized space combat. Clean battles fought with energy weapons at long range, but humans wanted to fight with knives and tools in damaged ship corridors. The alien's hands clenched as he remembered. They seemed to enjoy the chaos. The more dangerous and unpredictable the situation became, the better humans performed. Lisa asked, how did they win battles by crashing their own ships? They did not care about losing ships, Krikstal explained. They cared about winning fights. Cross would sacrifice her vessel to disable one of ours. Then her crew would capture our ship and use it against us, but the real nightmare was how humans behaved during these boarding actions. Our psychological profiles showed that human soldiers were actually having fun during the most dangerous parts of combat. They would make jokes while fighting for their lives. They would laugh when faced with impossible odds. The alien veteran described how this behavior affected Zephyrian morale more than any weapon could. Our soldiers expected enemies to be afraid during battle. Fear is natural. It helps thinking beings stay alive. But humans were not afraid. They were excited. He explained how human boarding teams led by Cross would sing songs while fighting through damaged ship sections. They would make bets about who could capture the most equipment or take the most prisoners. To them, war was some kind of game, a competition to see who could perform the most impressive actions under pressure. Krixtal paused to drink water again, his hands still shaking. But the worst part was how they treated our captured technology. He described how humans would examine Zephyrian equipment and immediately begin modifying it for their own use. Engineer Santos could look at one of our energy weapons and within hours understand how to make it more powerful, or more accurate, or smaller so humans could carry more of them. The alien explained how this violated everything the Empire knew about technological development. New military technology should take years to develop and test, decades for major improvements, but humans would make significant changes during active battles. Lisa looked puzzled. How is that possible? We still do not fully understand, Krixtal admitted. But humans seem to learn by doing rather than by studying. They would try modifications during combat and keep the ones that worked. He continued with examples of human innovation under pressure. Alex Turner developed 17 different types of ammunition during his first month of fighting. Each one was designed to counter specific Zephyrian equipment or tactics. The alien described how Turner would watch battle recordings, identify problems with current human weapons, and create solutions overnight. He made bullets that could track moving targets, explosive rounds that would detonate inside armor, chemical ammunition that would disable our equipment without killing the operators. But Turner was not the only human innovating rapidly. The entire species seemed capable of adapting to new situations faster than any other known life form. Maria Santos created a weapon she called a gravity hammer. It used principles from our own technology, but applied them in ways our engineers had never considered. Krixtal explained how the weapon could disable Zephyrian ships by creating localized gravity fields that would crush critical systems. Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles. They could not stop gravity itself from being manipulated. The alien veteran's voice became quieter. After analyzing captured human equipment, our scientists made a disturbing discovery. He looked directly at Lisa. Humans were not just adapting to our technology. They were improving it beyond what we thought was possible, and they were doing it faster than we could develop countermeasures. Krixtal described how the Empire's research fleets began avoiding direct contact with human forces. Our scientists were afraid that humans would capture and improve our newest weapons before we could even test them properly. The alien was quiet for a moment before continuing. That was when we began to understand that this war was not about military superiority. It was about which species could adapt faster to changing conditions. He looked at his hand, still trembling slightly, and humans were adapting faster than we could think. Krixtal stood up and walked to the window of the medical center. Outside, he could see human civilians going about their daily lives. Children playing in a park. Adults talking and laughing together. It was hard to believe these were the same species that had haunted his nightmares for 15 years. Supreme Commander Vexhar was facing a choice, the alien said without turning around. He could accept defeat and face disgrace before the Imperial Council, or he could authorize the final solution. Lisa Stone felt a chill in the room. What was the final solution? Total extermination, Krixtal replied simply. Vexhar decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. He gathered the largest military force in Zephyrian history to destroy Earth completely. The alien veteran returned to his seat, his black eyes reflecting the room's harsh lights. 50 battle fleets, 2 million soldiers. Planet killer weapons, biological warfare designed to eliminate all human life while preserving the world's resources. He explained how the Empire's strategy was different this time. No attempts at conquest or occupation, no trying to capture human technology or study their tactics. The plan was simple. Arrive at Earth's solar system, deploy the planet killers, watch from a safe distance as human civilization ended forever. But when the massive Zephyrian armada arrived at Earth, they found something unexpected. The humans were waiting for us, not hiding, not running, waiting. Krixtal described how Admiral Tony Rodriguez had positioned the human fleet in perfect formation between Earth and the approaching Zephyrian forces. Our intelligence said Earth had maybe 200 warships. We expected to outnumber them 25-1. But when we arrived, there were over 1,000 human vessels. The alien veteran explained how confused the Zephyrian commanders became. Where had the extra ships come from? How had humans built so many vessels so quickly? The answer, he said, was both simple and terrifying. Every civilian ship in human space had been converted into a warship. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, mining vessels, research ships. The humans had turned their entire merchant fleet into a military force. But that was not the most disturbing discovery. Each ship was crewed by volunteers, humans who had never been soldiers before the war. They had trained for maybe a few weeks before joining the battle. Krixtal's voice carried a note of disbelief. Our pilots trained for years before they could handle military spacecraft. But humans were sending farmers and teachers and shopkeepers into space combat. He described how Admiral Rodriguez had organized the human defense. Every ship had a specific mission. Some were meant to ram our vessels. Others would try to capture our technology. A few were loaded with explosives and intended to destroy themselves among our formations. The alien veteran paused, remembering the moment when the battle began. Supreme Commander Vexhar ordered all fleets to advance and deploy planet killers immediately. He wanted to end the war in the first few minutes of fighting. But the humans had other plans. The first wave of human ships moved toward us at maximum speed. We thought they were trying to close the distance for normal combat. We were wrong. Krixtal explained how the human vessels, commanded by pilots like Steve Parker and Grace Lee, began using kamikaze tactics that no rational species would attempt. They flew directly into our formations and detonated their own ships, not as accidents or last desperate acts, as planned strategy. The alien's hands clenched as he remembered. Parker's ship destroyed an entire squadron of our fighters by exploding in the middle of them. As he died, he was broadcasting messages of defiance and laughter. But the suicide attacks were only the beginning of the human strategy. While some ships were sacrificing themselves to disrupt our formations, others were using the chaos to capture our vessels intact. He described how Captain Grace Lee had led boarding teams that would attach to Zephyrian ships during the confusion of the kamikaze attacks. Lee had been a cargo ship captain before the war. She knew how to dock with other vessels safely, but during the battle she used those skills to board enemy ships while they were under fire. Krixtal's voice became strained. Our soldiers were trying to fight suicide bombers and boarders at the same time. It was impossible to maintain proper defensive formations. But the real shock came when the humans revealed their secret weapon. Ground Commander General Beth Clark had somehow learned to weaponize Earth itself. The alien veteran explained how the planet's surface had been modified during the months of preparation. Geological warfare specialist named Carl Williams had rigged the planet's tectonic systems. He could create earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on command. Lisa looked confused. How does that help in a space battle? It does not help in space, Krixtal clarified. But it prevented us from landing troops or establishing bases. Any Zephyrian forces that reached Earth's surface were destroyed by the planet itself. He described how Williams would trigger targeted geological events that would devastate landing sites while leaving human cities completely unharmed. Our scientists said it was impossible. No species could control planetary geology with that precision, but humans were doing it anyway. The alien veteran continued with the story of how the space battle developed. Admiral Rodriguez was using tactics that violated every principle of proper fleet combat. He explained how human ships would break formation constantly, attacking from unexpected angles and using unpredictable strategies. Our commanders tried to anticipate human movements, but humans kept changing their tactics in the middle of the battle. Sometimes individual ships would act independently, ignoring orders from their own fleet. But this apparent chaos was actually carefully planned. Krixtal realized later. Each human captain was given broad objectives but allowed to choose their own methods. This made it impossible for us to predict what any individual ship would do next. The alien described how the battle continued for 18 hours, far longer than any space engagement in Zephyrian military history. Our forces were designed for quick, decisive victories, but humans seemed willing to fight forever. They treated the battle like some kind of endurance contest. He remembered how human pilots would continue fighting even when their ships were heavily damaged. Grace Lee's vessel lost main power and life support, but she kept attacking using emergency systems and manual controls. The turning point came when human cyber warfare expert Nancy Kim managed to infiltrate Zephyrian fleet communications. Kim had been a computer programmer before the war, but during the battle, she somehow gained access to our most secure military networks. Krixtal explained how Kim broadcast a simple message in perfect Zephyrian directly to every ship in the Imperial fleet. She said, "You came to our home. Now you belong to us." The alien veteran's voice became barely a whisper. Then she proved it. He described how Kim began taking control of Zephyrian ships remotely, turning their weapons against their own fleet. Our security systems were supposed to prevent that kind of intrusion, but Kim was somehow bypassing protections that had taken us centuries to develop. The alien looked directly at Lisa. That was when Supreme Commander Vexhar realized we were not fighting a war anymore. We were fighting for our survival as a species. Krixtal was quiet for a long moment. The order to retreat came after 21 hours of battle. Half our fleet was destroyed or captured. The planet-killer weapons had never been deployed. He described the final human message as the Zephyrian forces fled. Admiral Rodriguez thanked us for providing his people with good combat practice. He said the battle had taught them many useful lessons about space warfare. The alien veteran's translator made static sounds as he continued. Then he warned us that if we ever returned, humans would be ready with better ships and new tactics. Lisa asked quietly, "Is that when the war ended?" Krixtal shook his head. "No. That was when we learned the truth about what humans really were, and why we could never win a war against them." The medical center had grown quiet around them. Lisa Stone realized that hours had passed since Krixtal began his story. The alien veteran sat slumped in his chair, looking older and more tired than when they had started. "You said the Empire learned the truth about humans," Lisa said gently. "What truth?" Krixtal was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "After the battle for Earth, Supreme Commander Vexhar ordered our xenobiologists to conduct a complete analysis of captured human soldiers. The alien veteran explained how teams of Zephyrian scientists had studied human prisoners, trying to understand what made them so effective in combat. Dr. Hemtar led the research project. She was our greatest expert on alien biology. She had studied hundreds of species across the galaxy, but the results of the human analysis were classified at the highest levels of Imperial security. Krixtal said, "Dr. Hemtar requested a private meeting with Supreme Commander Vexhar. She said her findings were too dangerous to put in a standard report." The alien described how the research team had discovered something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Humans were not just another aggressive species. They were the evolutionary product of a planet so hostile that survival required them to become something completely unique. Lisa leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Krixtal explained how most species in the galaxy had evolved on worlds with stable climates and predictable environments. When conditions are safe and unchanging, evolution favors traits like intelligence, cooperation, and peaceful problem-solving. Most galactic civilizations developed these characteristics. But Earth was different, he said, violently different. Your planet had ice ages, volcanic periods, meteor impacts, and climate changes that would have destroyed most species. But humans survived all of them. The alien veteran described how Dr. Hemtar's analysis showed that humans had evolved under constant pressure from environmental disasters. Every few thousand years, something would try to kill all humans. Massive climate changes, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts. Each time only the most adaptable individuals survived. He explained how this had shaped human evolution in ways that made them fundamentally different from other intelligent species. Most beings evolved to fit their environment. Humans evolved to change their environment to fit them. That is why they could turn farming tools into weapons and cargo ships into warships. But that was not the most disturbing discovery. Dr. Hemtar found that human soldiers like Rick Davis and Holly Mitchell were not trained killers. They were barely restrained apex predators. Krixtal's voice became strained. Your species evolved from hunters that could track and kill creatures much larger and stronger than themselves. Even your civilized humans still carry those instincts. The alien veteran explained how human combat effectiveness was not based on technology or training, but on evolutionary programming that was millions of years old. When humans fight, they are not thinking like modern soldiers. They are thinking like pack hunters who survived by being more clever and ruthless than anything else on their planet. He described how this explained human behavior that had confused Zephyrian military analysts. The laughter during combat, the willingness to sacrifice ships and lives, the ability to adapt tactics instantly, these were not learned behaviors. They were evolutionary survival mechanisms. But the most terrifying part of Dr. Hemtar's report was her conclusion about human development. She discovered that humans were still evolving, still adapting, and the war itself was accelerating their development. Lisa felt a chill. What does that mean? Each generation of human soldiers was measurably more effective than the previous one, Krikstal explained. Not through training or better equipment, through rapid evolutionary pressure. The alien veteran described how human children born during the war showed enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, and better stress tolerance than their parents. Dr. Hemtar calculated that if the war continued for another generation, humans would become essentially unbeatable by any known species. He explained how this discovery led to Dr. Hemtar's final recommendation to Supreme Commander Vexar. She said that humanity represented an evolutionary dead end for any species that contacted them. Humans would adapt to overcome any threat, absorb any technology, and convert any environment to their advantage. The alien was quiet for a moment before continuing. Her report contained a single strategic recommendation: complete avoidance. Lisa asked, "You mean the Empire should never fight humans again?" "We should never contact humans again," Krikstal clarified. Dr. Hemtar warned that even peaceful contact would eventually lead to humans becoming the dominant species in the galaxy. He described how the report had convinced Supreme Commander Vexar to end the war. Immediately, the surrender was not about preserving Zephyrian lives. It was about preserving our species' sanity. The alien veteran explained how soldiers who had fought humans required extensive psychological treatment. Many never recovered from what they had witnessed. The idea that war could be treated as recreation, that death could be faced with laughter, that entire planets could be weaponized. It broke their understanding of how intelligent beings should behave. Krikstal looked directly at Lisa. The final classified report stated that humans do not fight wars the way other species do. You fight for the joy of overcoming impossible odds. He paused, his translator struggling with the complex emotions in his voice. That is not warfare. That is a form of recreation that happens to involve death. No sane species can compete with that. The alien veteran described how the Zephyrian Empire had withdrawn all forces from human space and declared the entire region off limits to Imperial ships. We told the Galactic Council that humans were too primitive to be worth conquering. We never revealed the real reason for our retreat. He explained how the Empire had spent the last 15 years trying to forget about the war entirely. Official records state that the conflict ended due to logistical difficulties and resource constraints. The truth about human evolutionary development remains classified. Lisa asked, "Why are you telling me this now?" Krikstal was quiet for a long time, because Dr. Hemtar made one final prediction in her report. The alien veteran's hands shook as he spoke. She said that humans would eventually become bored with peace, that your species requires challenges and conflicts to remain psychologically healthy. He looked out the window at the human civilians going about their daily lives. When that boredom reaches a critical point, humans will start looking for new challenges, new opponents, new impossibilities to overcome. Krikstal turned back to Lisa. The galaxy needs to understand what we faced, because if humans ever decide that peace is boring, we are all doomed. The alien veteran stood up slowly, looking exhausted by the weight of his memories. Every species in the galaxy should know this truth. Humans are not just another intelligent life form. You are evolution's answer to the question, what would happen if a planet tried to create the perfect predator? He paused at the door of the medical center. And the answer is sitting right across from me, asking questions and taking notes, completely unaware of how terrifying she really is. Lisa Stone looked at her recording device. then at her hands, then at the notes she had been taking. For the first time in her career as a journalist, she wondered if some stories were too dangerous to tell. Outside the window, human children continued playing in the park, laughing and running and competing with each other in games that looked innocent but carried the genetic memory of hunters who had once stalked creatures through hostile environments on a world that had tried repeatedly to kill. Then Crystal walked away down the hospital corridor, leaving Lisa alone with the knowledge that humanity's greatest victory had been achieved not through superior technology or military strategy, but by simply being what millions of years of survival on Earth had made them. The recording device sat on the table between them, containing a story that might change how every species in the galaxy viewed the small blue planet, where apex predators had learned to build starships and dream of distant worlds to explore.